Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's policy briefing. I know we have guests joining us from DC, of course, around the US, and also Tokyo. I know it's late there, so thank you. Today's policy briefing, requirements for crafting Japan's new national security strategy, featuring Lieutenant General Koichi Isobe, 37th Commander of the Eastern Army from 2013 to 2015, with commentary from the Honorable Randall Shriver, Chairman of the Board, Project 2049 Institute. My name is Shanti Shoji, Director of Programs at Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA. As you may know, Sasakawa USA is a 501c3 nonpartisan organization dedicated to deepening the understanding of and strengthening the relationship between the US and Japan for the benefit of a free and open international community. Our activities mainly focus on security and diplomacy through the engagement of exchanges, dialogue, analysis, publications, and networking. Today's event is being recorded and is on the record. A recap and video will be made available on the Sasakawa USA website in the coming weeks. There will be time for a Q&A later in the program, and you can submit those questions at any time through the Q&A chat function at the bottom of your screen. Also, during the Q&A session, we will have simultaneous interpretation, which will be provided by Mishiori Okazaki from Japanese to English. By clicking the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, you can select to listen to the event in either English or Japanese. I will now turn over the program to Dr. Satohiro Akimoto, Chairman and President of Sasakawa USA. どうぞよろしくお願いします。
Thank you, Shanti, for your kind introduction. I am Satohiro Akimoto, President and Chairman of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA. I am delighted to see you all. Thank you very much for attending. It's been roughly 9 years since Japan's last national security strategy, which present medium to long-term guidelines for defense and foreign policies, was released in December 2013. And now Japan has entered active process of revising it, as the strategy was originally intended to cover a period of 10 years. The revised strategy will be crucially important for Japan's defense, as it will reflect tremendous changes in security challenges and threats, such as China's increasing aggressiveness in asserting its national interest and tremendous importance of technological innovation in national security competition. The strategy is also important because Japanese government will also review its national defense program guidelines, which identify targets for defense buildup, and medium-term defense program, which outline buildup plans over the next 5 years. Prime Minister Kishida, who mentioned revision of a strategy and the 2 defense buildup papers in a policy speech, directed a National Security Council to consider all options available, including ability to strike enemy military bases and enhancing economic security. Needless to say, the new strategy will surely call for closer cooperation with the United States, other Quad members, and like-minded European nations. I am very pleased to host General Koichi Isobe today. He is representing a group consist of a high-level former SDF leaders and a Ministry of Defense official called the National Security Strategy Research Group, led by General Ryoichi Oriki. General Oriki is a member of Sasakawa Peace, was a member of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA board. So welcome back, General Oriki. The other member of the group are former Vice Minister of Defense, Tetsuro Kuroe, Lieutenant General Kazuaki Sumida, Vice Admiral Tokuhiro Ikeda, Vice Admiral Tatsuhiko Takashima, Lieutenant General Junichi Araki, and Lieutenant General Shigeki Muto. Most of them are attending this event online from Japan, so thank you very much for your important work and welcome to the event. The group produced a comprehensive report pointing out important elements to be considered in the new national security strategy last November. General Isobe will talk about the report representing the group. He will be followed by Secretary Randy Shriver, who is going to make commentary on the report and the General Isobe's presentation. Secretary Shriver served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs and is currently chairman of the Project 2049 and the Strategy Advisor for Pacific Solutions. He is also a member of Sasakawa USA Board of Advisors. General Isobe, floor is yours.
Thank you very much for kind introduction, Dr. Akimoto. And good morning and good evening, distinguished audiences. My name is Koichi Isobe, retired Lieutenant General of Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, as well as a member of the NSS study group. On behalf of the study group, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to Sasakawa USA for giving us this precious opportunity. And I'm also very honored to share this time with Honorable Randy Shriver. Thank you very much. So let me start. Okay, so next slide, please. So the study group is headed by General Oriki, and the members are as shown on the slide. Dr. Akimoto introduced to all of us, so let me cut this one. Next, yes. The study group's objective is to review the 2013 NSS and make recommendations for new NSS from practical and realistic perspectives. And it was convened in February 2021, last year. It held 20 meetings and discussed for more than 40 hours. And it completed in late November and disseminated to the document to the government and the media, as well as the political leadership. I think it was a very good timing for the group to disseminate in late November. During that time, the government has not officially announced the revision of the NSS. But in late December, Prime Minister Kishida mentioned that the government will review the NSS and also as well as two government documents by the end of this year. So for example, let me show some examples of the newspaper's article. Next slide, please. This is the January 9th, the Yomiuri Shimbun's interview with General Oriki. And next one, please. And this is the English version of the Yomiuri Shimbun published in Japan, and the name of the paper is the Japan News. New strategy must underline Beijing threats. Next, please. And this is the January 11th, the Nikkei Shimbun, the Japan economic paper, interview with General Oriki. And the caption is possess counter-strike capabilities. So as a whole, the response was very affirmative since we disseminated the document. Next slide, please. And before the discussion, we set up basic principles of the study group. The NSS should be the supreme strategy for a nation that defines how to secure its existence. Japan needs to keenly grasp the trend of changes in the global security environment and make decisions promptly and solidify security by bringing together national powers. From this perspective, based on the following three basic principles. One, developing discussions without taboos. Second, recommending with a focus on improving effectiveness. Third, aiming for realistic recommendations. Next slide, please. The contents of my presentation is as shown on the slide. What is the current NSS? Changes in strategic environment since 2013. What is missing in the current NSS? And 11 policy recommendations. So what is the 2013 NSS? The 2013 NSS was developed on December 17, 2013, under Shinzo Abe's administration. More than 8 years have passed since its development. I would like to raise 4 features in this NSS. 1, it is the first ever NSS for Japan in the post-World War II era. Before this development, there was a cabinet document named Basic Policy for National Defense, adopted in 1957. It was almost like a mantra. It survived for more than a half century. Second, it defines Japan's national interest for the first time in its history after World War II. Third, it mainly covers foreign and defense policies, plus space, cyber, energy, ODA, and maritime. But it does not cover economy nor technology. Fourth, it guides the policy over the next decade. So it is almost time to revise the current NSS. Next, please. How does the group see changes in the strategic environment since 2013? Since the establishment of the 2013 NSS, the world witnessed drastic changes in the strategic environment. Let me point out several features. Next, first, expanding the scope of national security and blurring the boundaries between military and non-military, as well as peace and war. Typical examples are 2014's Russo-Ukrainian War, which is symbolized as hybrid warfare, and China's unlawful maritime claims, militarization, and coercive activities in the South and East China Seas, including the Senryaku Islands. In addition, the world witnessed increasing malign activities in the cyber, space, and other domains, and attempts to change the status quo through coercive or predatory means short of armed conflict. Russia is now challenging in the Ukraine borders again. Second, intensifying great power competition. I do not have to say much about this, but especially for Japan, geostrategically, it is situated in the middle of the great powers, the US, China, and Far East Russia. The first island chain, stretching from Japan's main island to the southwestern island, to Taiwan, then the Philippines, is increasingly important for the peace and stability of the Pacific region. Third, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, 5Gs, quantum computing, biotechnology would become game changers in national security. Fourth, climate change. Climate change would eventually impact national security too. Climate change would directly influence military equipment, installations, and missions. It also causes shortage of water, flood, or drought. These disasters trigger tensions between different ethnic groups or neighboring countries. In the joint statement of the January 7th, US-Japan 2+2, the US and Japanese ministers referred to it as a climate crisis instead of using climate change for the first time. Next. What is missing in the 2013 NSS? Next, let me raise 4 points here. First, the current version has not touched upon economic security and emerging technologies so much. Second, China issue. In the current NSS, it says, I quote, PRC becomes an issue of concern to the international community, including Japan. The government of Japan needs to pay careful attention to the situation, unquote. Japan does not have to confront with China because it is the biggest trading partner. However, from the military and technology perspectives, PLA, People's Liberation Army's medium-range ballistic missiles cover most of Japan, and China is trying to change the status quo in East and China Seas, especially the Senkaku Islands. Japan should possess a grand strategy toward China. Third, the current NSS leaves existing basic defense policies intact. These are exclusively defense-oriented policy, Senshu Boe in Japanese, strike capabilities, and defense budget issues. Fourth, consideration to climate changes. So in conclusion, the group picked up 11 recommendation items. So next, first, position the new NSS as the highest strategy of Japan. The current NSS does not cover economic security nor technology strategy. The GOJ, Government of Japan, should orchestrate every national resource under the new NSS. Second, review the existing defense policies and revise these policies if necessary. Majority of these are exclusively defense-oriented policy, sensible, counter strike capabilities, and the defense budget. As for the sensible, it is explained in the defense white paper, I quote, defense force is used only in the event of an attack, that the extent of the use of defense force is kept to the minimum necessary for defense, and that the defense capabilities to be possessed and maintained by Japan are limited to the minimum necessary for self-defense. The policy including these matters refers to the posture of a passive defense strategy in accordance with the spirit of the Constitution, unquote. The idea of sensible was significant for the defense agency and the self-defense forces which had been established shortly after the World War II, in the sense that the people understood the power of self-defense would exercise the right of self-defense and operated restrainedly in accordance with the spirit of the Constitution of Japan. On the other hand, imposing the restriction excessively has had the side effect of limiting the content of Japan's self-defense powers even more than what was originally outlined. Therefore, in formulating a new national security strategy, we should review how sensible has contributed to and how it complicates defense policy debates. Next, strike capabilities. Yeah. In Japan, concerning the strike capability issue, there is no fixed wording. In the study group discussion, we instead call it counter strike capability, which aims to exclude preemptive strike. Japan's exclusively defense-oriented policy is not without the idea of attacking enemy bases. In recent years, with the successive ballistic missile launches by North Korea, discussions on Japan's ability to attack enemy bases have become increasingly pragmatic. Japan needs to possess the counter-strike capabilities and needs to develop a comprehensive deterrence policy. On January 17th, Prime Minister Kishida delivered the policy speech, as Dr. Akimoto mentioned before, to the Diet. He clearly mentioned, I quote, "We will realistically examine all options, including possessing what is called enemy-based attack capability, without excluding any possibilities," unquote. Okay, next, as for the defense budget, the group recommends to increase the budget to 2% of GDP. A significant increase in future defense spending is necessary for the following reasons. First, despite the increasingly severe security environment surrounding Japan, Japan's defense spending growth over the past decade has only been 1.08 times. Meanwhile, Russia grew 2.5 times, China 2.4 times, and South Korea grew 1.7 times. If the situation continues, it will destabilize the security environment in the region. Secondly, it is about the breakdown of the defense expense. A recent budget feature, one of the recent budget features is the rapid growth of foreign military sales. FMS began to increase in fiscal year 2012. It accounted for 690 billion yen in fiscal year 2019 and 470 billion yen in fiscal year 2020. In accordance with the increase of FMS, the amount of procurement from domestic defense industries is on the decline. Next, research and development. In Japan, the ratio of R&D expenses in the defense field is quite low at 3%, compared with 16% in South Korea and 11% in the UK. So Japan needs to beef up the R&D investment. Another factor is concerning our adversaries' growing precision missile capabilities. The SDF's installations should be strengthened. Resiliency, survivability, and sustainment are key factors for deterrence, and the budget shall be allocated in these fields. Thirdly, from the perspective of international comparison of defense spending, NATO targets 2% of GDP for national defense spending for member countries. According to a statement from the NATO summit in June last year, 10 member states are expected to meet the 2% target by the end of this year, and with 2/3 of them expected to meet in 2024. Looking at the US allies in the Indo-Pacific, Singapore is 3.2%, South Korea 2.8%, Australia 2.1%, Taiwan 1.9%, Thailand 1.5%, and only Japan is extremely low, 1.0%. A significant increase in defense spending is necessary to swiftly implement the strengthening of Japan's defense capabilities, as expressed in the joint statement of the leaders of Japan and the United States. Increasing defense spending all at once is unrealistic. It is desirable to increase the amount by 8 or 9% every year over the next 10 years. This steady effort is pragmatic and realistic. So, third recommendation, energize the whole of government approach to proactively respond to new emerging threats, such as hybrid warfare or coercive actions to turn over the status quo. The nation should utilize every possible power in an orchestrated manner. To do so, Japan needs to strengthen the cabinet office, especially National Security Secretary. And in the self-defense force, it should establish the permanent joint headquarters. A hybrid warfare is an indefinite warfare in which a nation exerts influence on its adversaries, not only by military means, but also by various non-military means to achieve a certain political purpose. To properly deal with such hybrid warfare, it is necessary for not only the self-defense forces, but also relevant ministries and agencies to share the threat recognition and deal with them as a whole of government approach. Next. Fourth recommendation, strengthen the Japan-US alliance. The group's fundamental recognitions toward the alliance are as follows. 1. Alliance values are growing for both parties. Both nations share common values and interests and complement their geographical gap. China's hegemonic behavior presumably remains for the time being. The US-Japan alliance plays a critical role as the cornerstone of regional peace, security, and prosperity. Second, Our recognition is selective engagement by the US in the region is increasingly probable. So Japan should assume more proactive goals. Of course, the US is committed to defend Japan under the Security Treaty. However, the new norm is that both parties will need to respond more proactively to gray zone threats. So the points are shown on the slide. Assume more proactive roles in the alliance, establish multi-layered alliance structure, expand the scope of cooperation areas. Fifth, realign the relationship with the major players based on the dynamic trend of the free and open Indo-Pacific region. Especially as I said earlier, the Japanese government needs to redefine China as a potential threat. We need to strengthen the relationship with like-minded countries, for example, Australia, India, ASEAN countries, and EU countries. Sixth recommendation, strategic approach to new domains. To overcome invisible battles in expanding new domains, Japan must build an orchestrated system that would deal with security as an entire nation by establishing a prompt decision-making mechanism. In addition, since attacks on new domains cause immeasurable damage to the entire social system, it is necessary to formulate a functional guarantee plan for systems related to the new domain and the foundations that support it, and work to strengthen resistance as a countrywide business. Seventh, maritime security. The Indo-Pacific is a region centered on the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Important sea lanes in the region face challenges such as piracy, terrorism, and large-scale disasters. Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific initiative entrenches values such as the rule of law, freedom of navigation, peaceful resolution of conflicts, and the promotion of free trade. Next, eighth recommendation, intelligence. To enhance the ability to collect a wide range of various information and to quickly process the vast amount of data obtained, Japan needs to further strengthen the intelligence collection and intelligence processing functions, such as the Cabinet Intelligence and Research Office and relevant ministries and agencies. Ninth, economic security and defense industries. Economic security must be incorporated into the NSS, and the new NSS should be developed as a more comprehensive strategy. Considering economic security, strategic autonomy is critical. The government must secure people's lives and ensure economic activities without overly relying on other countries, even in crises. Second is strategic essentiality. Japan should occupy an indispensable position in the global industrial and economic community. Based upon these two underlying features, economic security should be strengthened. 10th, climate change. Japan should develop a security strategy on climate change, expand its efforts to address environmental and energy issues that it has already tackled, and demonstrate leadership in the world-focused field of climate change. By leveraging its experience as one of the world's leading disaster great powers and the capabilities accumulated through international activities such as disaster relief and humanitarian assistance. The last recommendation, review the national security strategy framework, align them like the US. The final 11th point is review the national security strategy framework. Based on the fundamental principles of a new national security strategy, which is the highest strategy of the state, the relevant ministries and agencies should formulate a strategy under their jurisdiction. The ministry, especially the Ministry of Defense and the Self-Defense Forces, should formulate a national defense strategy that serves as the basis for the development, deterrence, and countermeasures of defense capability in place of National Defense Program guidelines. Based on the National Defense Strategy, the Joint Staff should formulate an integrated military strategy. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Well, General Isobe, thank you very much for your clear and organized presentation of the report. I hope that, and I'm sure that the government of Japan will make a good use of the report and particularly your recommendations. I also hope that Japanese citizens will continue to think about the national defense in a realistic way in the future. Now, I would like to invite Secretary Shriver to make his comment. Secretary Shriver.
Well, good morning and good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment on this report and General Isobe's very fine presentation. My first comment is well done and congratulations. It's a very important effort, and I agree with Dr. Akimoto's introductory comment to my work, to my presentation, that he hopes that the Japanese government pays close attention to this report. I would wholeheartedly endorse that view, as I think there are a lot of very important comments and particularly the recommendations. So well done to General Isobe, General Araki, and the entire group. My comments, of course, brief, but from a U.S. perspective, so I might tilt in the direction of commenting about the alliance and Japan's process going forward in creating the new national security strategy. My comments are also informed, of course, by some experience in 4 previous administrations I served in, including the last administration. I'm very aware that there may be people on this call like General McMaster who had a more direct hand in our national security strategy, but I certainly saw the relationship between the national security strategy in the U.S. as it was developed in our national defense strategy, which is something that, of course, General Isobe's presentation commented on. So with that, let me say, first of all, I think one of the keys going forward, and I think it's embedded in the report and the recommendations about strengthening the U.S.-Japan alliance, is I think that starts with the creation of these strategic documents themselves. As Japan goes forward with the consideration of a new national security strategy, I would note that the Biden administration is well along in its process of creating its first national security strategy. I'm told that the draft has been reviewed at least through the deputies level. There's a draft that the interagency is pretty satisfied with. It's awaiting President Biden's review. And frankly, it may be on hold as certain things play out. For example, what's happening with respect to Russia and Ukraine. But I would suggest it's important that we have good communication at this stage of development prior to the release of one of our strategic documents. It looks like we may be first in the queue there. We certainly found in the last administration through the NDS process that our ability to talk to Japan as we were developing the NDS, their ability to talk to us in the development of the National Defense Program guidelines, which came out in December 2018, close proximity to one another. But it basically allowed us to have high alignment when those documents were released, not by accident, but by intention. And so I hope as Japan goes forward, there is that process of coordination so that when the documents are released, there is that alignment already built in rather than trying to create it post facto. And I think that there's a good chance there will be. We've certainly seen alignment through statements such as the Prime Minister Suga's statement with Biden and the recent 2+2 and the like. So I do think having that alignment is important, particularly when it comes to end states and outcomes. And I note General Isobe's mention of the free and open Indo-Pacific being one of the remaining guiding principles. It seems as though that will remain the case for the Biden administration as well. They've basically endorsed that concept, but also prioritization. I'll make another comment about prioritization in a moment, but I think that's also key. I think in the recommendations, I like the fact that there was commentary on both process and organization, as well as some regional and functional issues. I think it's important when you look at the process and organization that an NSS not only have that high level support and be really the preeminent document, but that it informs both vertically and horizontally the other strategic documents throughout the government. And this is noted in General Isobe's briefing. Certainly for us and my own experience, it was important that we had a strong NSS led by General McMaster, a strong NDS led by General Mattis, and then that allowed me and my office to produce an Indo-Pacific strategy report. So that's the vertical sense that we were aligned, possibly because we were able to do it sequentially. That's not always the case. But it's important when you have those documents aligned, when you finally get to the point of policy implementation, that really each subsequent strategy report is informed by the higher level reports. And I like the fact that that was mentioned in the briefing. I think also horizontal alignment is important, and it was noted in the briefing about whole of government approach. We've certainly had instances in the past where it looked like agencies in the United States had different policies, even though nominally they were operating under the same national security guidelines through the national security strategy. So keeping an eye on that is quite important. I think another point, these strategic documents, they're always challenged by having the balance between general level guidance and strategic level guidance and enough granularity to ensure fidelity when it comes to implementation. And I think that's something just to keep an eye on. I think at this point and in the report, things are still kept at a very general level, and that's entirely appropriate, but just something to keep an eye on so that when we get to the point of releasing a report and expecting fidelity in the policy implementation, that there's enough granularity to be directive enough, I'll say, so that the document is in fact the guiding document when it comes to policy implementation. I would make a similar comment when it comes to flexibility and adaptability. You know, we often release these strategic documents and the world changes dramatically, and it looks as though the document itself might be of less relevance or diminished relevance. Probably the greatest example of that was in the Bush administration with 9/11. You didn't find a lot of commentary. You certainly found some, but you didn't find the prioritization on counterterrorism until after the event. And so I think building into these documents some awareness of the need for flexibility and adaptability in a very dynamic security environment. So just a couple more comments on what was mentioned in the briefing about some of the strategic challenges, both regional and functional. I mentioned prioritization. I think the strength of the strategic documents in the administration I recently served in was the clarity of prioritization. With the national defense strategy, we often said China is not one of the priorities, it's not among the priorities, it is the priority. And that became very powerful working intra-department, but also interagency, whenever there were questions about trade-offs or which direction to go on policy. Having that clear prioritization was extremely helpful. So in the briefing, obviously many things were mentioned. China as a potential threat was mentioned, but I think it will be important going forward understanding is that actually the true priority, and will that be the organizing principle for the agencies in Japan? And that's just something to work through. And there will be challenges to that, of course. Great power competition, we don't forget Russia, and certainly we don't forget Russia in the current environment with the challenges with respect to Ukraine. The DPRK was not mentioned that I heard, I might have missed it, but certainly with the weapons being developed and weapons at Pyongyang's disposal, that could certainly be a great disruptor to the strategic challenges that Japan faces and the United States faces. So that's something to be aware of and keep an eye on. I like the mention of realignment of relationships, particularly of like-minded countries. I have a notion of where that would head, but I think it would be interesting to hear maybe more specificity on multilateral, minilateral efforts such as the Quad, such as what Japan might do now with the development of AUKUS and the like. So I think that's an interesting thing to maybe pull the thread on a little bit more. I think it's extraordinarily important that technology was mentioned as one of the emerging challenges, but also opportunities. Again, something that we will need more granularity on going forward, because of course technology has not only a innovation side and a race ahead side, it also has a defense side, how you protect your own technological base, your own intellectual property, but also how you might thwart the development of emerging technologies and their applications when it comes to your competitors and your potential adversaries. There are a lot of other questions that are really sort of embedded in the more general points made in the briefing. I know there's been a lot of focus on Taiwan, for example, and the potential for US-Japan planning on Taiwan. I think this report, and particularly if this report informs the ultimate national security strategy, I'm confident that that will get full attention and it will be in alignment with the United States. But again, just something to understand further as we go forward. I have a lot more I could say. I'm just over time. I hope you can tell I'm very enthused by this report and the potential for the Japanese government to adopt a lot of these recommendations, because I think it really is in the right direction. So thank you.
Well, Randy, thank you very much for your comprehensive comment. And, sometimes considering the domestic politics situation in the United States, allies, and including Japan, worry a little bit about the consistency of U.S. foreign policy, defense policy. But listening to you and the people like you, I have confidence that the United States and Japan will continue to have robust and strong security alliance. So thank you very much for your service. And I really appreciated you taking time in joining our event. So thank you very much. I would like to open up the floor for the Q&As. And the first question goes to General Chip Gregson. Chip?
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Akimoto. I join Randy in my admiration for the new national security strategy, and it reminds me of Japan's solid leadership within the alliance structure over the years, and Japan's ability to adapt the alliance and to adapt Japan's security policies to many changing conditions. We went from the Cold War to whatever the period after the Cold War was called, and these changes continue. Japan's contributed to the alliance with conceptually with the creation of the Quad, the support for the free and open Indo-Pacific, and General Isobe talked about economics, and I'm reminded that Japan's leadership with the comprehensive and progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership filled a gap when the United States was not able to fulfill our own ambition of leadership in the Trans-Pacific, in the original Trans-Pacific Partnership. I like the strategy and the presentation for its declarative sentences and its solid recommendations without a lot of somewhat inexact aspirational goals attached. It is a great work plan going forward. I'd like to ask a two-part question. One would be, is there a view in the strategy on what to do about Chinese political warfare that's operating inside all of our countries? And secondly, within all this, if you had one or two recommendations to the United States on how we might adapt things to support Japan's new national security strategy, what would those recommendations be? Thank you.
General Isobe?
はい、まずランディ・シュライバー時間のお話を聞きまして、大変示唆に富むお話で大変感謝いたします。特にやはりアメリカの戦略を策定されたご経験から、いわゆるそのフレキシビリティ、戦略文書にはフレキシビリティとかアダプタビリティが必要であること、それからそのクリアなプライオリタイゼーションが必要だということをおっしゃっていただきまして、これは今日聞いておられる日本の政府の方もたくさんいらっしゃると思うので、非常にやはりこれは参考になったと思います。私自身は日米同盟はですね、今、1月7日に2+2が行われて、21日に首脳会談が行われました。その時にクリアに言われたのが、その抑止をやることと、抑止がうまくいかない場合には、対処をしっかり日米でやるんだということをですね、この2+2で初めて明示したと思うんですね。今までは一般的な表現、いわゆるその中国の威圧的な行動に反対するという原則論を言ってたのが、抑止と対処ということを明確に言ったので、私はやっぱり今の日米同盟の、当局者というか、日米両政府の関係者と非常にやっぱりこう強い共通の認識があるというふうに感じて心強く思っています。で、グレグソン将軍のお話、質問がありましたけれども、一つ目は中国の政治工作ということですが、これはなかなかやっぱり目に見えないというかですね、証拠がつかみにくいので、なかなかこうだということは言えませんけども、沖縄のその COVID-19 のいろんなニュースの話がかなりやっぱりこうオーバーラップして、話がどんどん大きくなる。あるいはその総選挙の時にいろんな工作があったんじゃないかということもありますけども、ここはちょっと私は明確な根拠とかないものですから、はっきりと申せない。ただやはり常に中国というのは、あらゆる手段、これ昔からそうですね、孫子の時代から我が国にもやってますので、我々は十分気をつけて、それに対処するということなんです。2つ目はどんな質問だったんですか？日米関係だ。
Chip?
Second question was one or two things that the United States should do to help support the goals and the task in your NSS.
はい、ありがとうございます。この戦略は、NSS と防衛大綱と中規模は3つ一緒に、今年の年末までにできるということなので、私はやっぱりクロースコーディネーションが非常に大事だと思うんですね。日本側の戦略を立てる上で、アメリカの認識とやっぱり合わせることが大事なので、やっぱりそのレコグニションシェアリングというんですかね、そういうことをしっかりとやる必要があるなというふうに思います。ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Randy, do you have any comment on the conversation? I don't mean to put you on spot or anything like that, but.
Yeah, no, I thought General Isobe's very confident answer, knowing how to deal with China, was good. I do think the political warfare aspect is one that we need to continue to work with one another on, because it's very insidious in that it's not just defense or security in obvious ways. It's into our universities, it's into elite circles, and we need to have both as an alliance, like-minded and common approaches, but really into our society. So it's an important challenge, and I like the confidence of General Isobe in his answer, but certainly we need to work closely together when it comes to implementing.
Thank you very much. Our next question goes to Dr. Ken Weinstein of Hudson Institute. I think you might be muted, Ken.
You hear me now?
Yes.
I apologize. Okay. Look, first, Dr. Akimoto, thank you. I want to thank the Sasakawa Peace Foundation for a fascinating conversation. I want to thank General Isobe for a very clear presentation and an extraordinarily interesting report. And I want to thank Secretary Shriver and General Gregson for their comments. I wanted to hone in on one specific point that you alluded to in your review of the report, which was you noted that procurement in Japan from domestic sources is declining as a share of the Japanese defense budget. And I think that's a somewhat disturbing factor in the sense that Japan's defense industry is not export driven. It's not fully globally competitive in some sense because it's not export driven, doesn't have the kind of broader markets that many other even smaller countries can compete in, less technologically advanced countries in some cases. And I'm wondering about your sense of the need for domestic defense procurement reform, the need to maybe create a startup defense sector, which Japan started to do in the space sector, but hasn't yet done on the defense side. And all of this obviously fits into the question of the national security industrial base and just how autonomous Japan can be, which is a concern. So thank you very much, General Isobe.
Thank you very much, General Isobe.
はい、ワインスタイン先生、ありがとうございます。またお目にかかれて大変嬉しく思います。まさに防衛産業をどうするかというのは、本当にクリティカルなイシューです、日本において。それで今現状をちょっと言うとですね、経済安全保障関連法案というのが、多分間もなく法律が国会に出されるんですね。で、その経済安全保障法案はできてから国家安全保障戦略ができるので、ちょっとややそこは順番が違うのかなという気もするんですけど、それでその経済安全保障その関連法案には防衛産業のことはほとんど入ってないんですね。だからちょっとそこがやっぱり問題があるのかなと思ってます。で、現在岸防衛大臣が、今日の報道によると、その防衛産業の輸出、海外移転、これを促進するですね、協議会を立ち上げるということを発表しました。で、これはですね、結局省庁の話をすれば、どうしてもやっぱりストーブパイプになっている。経済産業省は経済安全保障関連法案をもう優先して作りたいと。で、一方でやっぱり防衛省は防衛産業のところをしっかりと保護しながら、海外輸出も目指したいと。こういう2つが両方上がってきてるんですね。だから本来であればやはり両省庁がよく話し合ってですね、この防衛産業をどうするのか、それから経済安全保障の中で、そのクリティカルな産業をですね、どのように保護するのかとか、あるいはイノベーションをどう進めるのかということを、もっとやっぱり政府全体で関係省庁で話し合うことが必要だと思います。今ちょっとそんな印象を私は持っております。特に座長の折木統幕長はこの防衛産業については非常にやはり危機意識を持っていますので、ここのところはですね、かなり日本語では詳しく書いてありますので、ぜひ英語を訳してもらえればある程度理解できるかと思います。取り急ぎ以上です。
Thank you very much. I would like to take up a question from our audience. This is from Mr. Shinsuke Takahashi, chairman of NEC America. In order to increase R&D of defense technology in Japan, how should we promote defense technology R&D in universities in Japan?
大学におけるその関係ですよね。これはまあ日本のやっぱり特殊な事情があります、戦後の。いわゆるその軍事に関わる研究開発にはその大学は加わらないという。でこれは日本学術会議というところとも関係があってですね、やはり引き続きその考え方の根本が残っている。だからやっぱりそこは問題がある。で、その大学側のもう一つの問題は、いわゆるその、留学生ですね。それに対してセキュリティクリアランスというか、非常に機微な技術の研究開発をする際に、日本にはそういったそのセキュリティクリアランスのルールが十分整備されていませんから、そこはやや危険があるんだと思うんですね。ですからやっぱりアカデミアの中のその情報の保全というものをこれから考えないと、日本の非常に大事な機微技術がある国に流れてしまう、不正にですね、そういうことを考えなきゃいけないというふうに私は思います。
Thank you very much. This version at the academic institute or universities in Japan on working on defense-related technology or security issues in general has been discussed for a long time. General Isobe, in your opinion, what can Japan do in order to change the nature of that discourse between universities and academic institutions and defense community in Japan for Japan's national security?
はい、シュライバー先生がおっしゃったように、やっぱりその技術というのはイノベーションの機会と同時に、やはりその反対のあれですよね、ディフェンスということも考えなきゃいけない、プロテクションということも考えなきゃいけない。そのバランスが大事だと思いますけども、防衛省の方で今ですね、その大学にある程度技術の R&D の予算をつけられるようなシステムができたんですね。ですから、やっぱそれをこう伸ばしていくという話がありますし、例えばそのゼロエミッション社会を実現するという、これはどっちかというとクライメットチェンジに対する対応ですけども、この中でその防衛に関連するようなですね、技術の革新をしなきゃいけない分野があります。そういったところは別に軍事技術じゃないということで、大学の協力を得られると思うんですよね。だからそういうところから入っていくというのが大事かなというふうに思います。
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Mr. James Schoff, Senior Director of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA. Jim?
Thank you, Satohiro, and hello, Isobe-san. Thank you for your talk today. I wanted to go back to the energizing the whole of government approach discussion. In your third recommendation, you talked about strengthening the cabinet office, especially the National Security Secretariat, and establishing a permanent joint headquarters. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the discussions in the study group about maybe specific ideas about how you would strengthen, what kinds of adjustments might be useful at the National Security Council, and how would the permanent joint headquarters potentially interact? Would it interact differently with Indo-PACOM or U.S. Forces Japan? Are there some alliance relationships that might change as a result of these kinds of whole of government changes? Thank you.
はい、ショフ先生、お久しぶりです。ご質問ありがとうございます。2つですね、1つ目のその全省庁対応ということなんですけど、これはもう全てに言えることで、例えば新しい領域の例えばサイバー防護にしてもですね、あるいはその海洋の安全保障にしても、関係する省庁がたくさんあるんです。 で、それがやっぱりその日本の場合には、関係省庁はストークアウトになって、これはまあ、議員内閣制度をとってますので、これをいきなりそのアメリカの大統領のように、一人に権限をすべて委ねて、全部そこから指示が出るというふうにはなかなかできないんですけども、したがって今は、まあ、内閣官房のところで、総合調整権限を使って、総合調整しているということなんですよね。それで全省庁対応するということなんですけども、果たしてこれで本当にうまくいくのかっていうのは、ずっと日本政府、大きな震災を経験しながら、あるいはその海外でのいろんな事象を経験しながら改善をしてきました。でもやっぱりまだまだ足りなくてですね、国家安全保障局、それから内閣危機管理官、いろんなそのポストがございますけども、これをやはりもう一度シャッフルしてもいいのかな。それがじゃあどんなふうにするのかっていうのは、私もまだ十分なアイデアはありません。しかし、本当にやっぱりパンデミックにしても、その震災対処にしても、すべてやはり今まであんまりうまくいってないです、日本は。間違いなく。で、それはやっぱり検証が足らないんです。アフターアクションレポート、レビューが足らないんだと私は思うんですね。これはもう、東日本大震災で、折木東学長がみんな、自衛隊の我々も経験しました。福島第一原発の事故を踏まえて。でそこからまだ私は十分な教訓を生かしていないような気がします。あと2つ目のその PGHQ の話ですけども、やっぱりこの PGHQ っていうのは、統合幕僚幹部という、今、ジョイントスタッフがあります。これはあくまでも幕僚の組織です。だから指揮権がないわけですね。でしたがって、インド米国の作戦上のカウンターパートである PGHQ を日本は作らないと、本当の作戦の時にですね、うまくいかないと思います。なぜなら、統合幕僚長がいて、その統合幕僚長は基本的にはジョイントチーフですから、ディフェンスミニスターをサポートするのが主たる役で、現在はそのジョイントチーフがジョイントコマンダーの役割を果たしている。これ一人で二役しています。これは実際のクライシスになった時には多分機能しない。ですから、PGHQ、陸海空のメジャーコマンドを束ねる PGHQ が、まあ私は必要だと。で、それがインド米国と作戦上のですね、いろんな調整とかオペレーションプランをもう日頃から詰めておく。日頃からもう練っておくということが非常に大事だと思います。よろしいでしょうか。
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to take up a question from the audience. Mr. Ryoichi Kato, currently a visiting research fellow at the Institute of National Defense Security Research in Taiwan. Mr. Kato is asking whether it is correct to understand that a policy recommendation proposed a change in basic nature of Japan's defense policy from exclusively defense-oriented policy to a threat-based strategy.
はい、非常に鋭い質問です。加藤さん、ありがとうございます。この専守防衛というのはですね、まあ、どっちかというともうマントラみたいになっちゃってて、大変なんですけど、実はですね、先ほどちょっと話した国防の基本方針というのが、1957年にできて、2013年に改定したんですね。で、それは国家安全保障戦略に変えるって言ってたわけです。で、国防の基本方針をなくしたということなので、私は専守防衛という考え方は、やはり大事だと思うんです。日本のやっぱり国のありようとして。ただ、そろそろもうフェードアウトしてもいいのかなと、いうふうに考えています。でもう一つは、先ほどおっしゃった脅威対抗ベースにするのかという話なんですけども、 もともとの防衛大綱というのは、1981年ですから、ゴーヒト大綱ですか。平和時の防衛力の水準を規定したものなんですね。それからずっとこう改定されてきてますけども、基本的に日本の防衛大綱というのは、脅威対抗型ではないので、相手の能力ベースに合わせた能力を持とうとしています。でこれは非常に欠陥がある。だから、その脅威対抗ベースというと、ちょっとややインパクトが大きいかもしれませんけども、じゃあ中国のその中距離弾道ミサイルへの脅威に対しては、日本はどのように対応するのかということを考えない。アメリカのデタランスだけに耐えるのか。まあ、そういった意味で今、カウンターストライクケーパビリティという概念が出てきているんだと思うんですよね。だから、やっぱり、シミュレーションをやってですね、アメリカのように戦略を立てるときには、いろんなシミュレーションとかウォーゲームをやって、実際に有事になったときに勝てるプランを作っておかなければいけない。それがナショナルディフェンスストラテジーだと私も。ナショナルミリタリーストラテジーだと私も。
Thank you very much. General Isobe, in order to have a robust and strong national security policy, and also support actual activities of a self-defense force, national security discourse, particularly among citizens, are very important. With regard to exclusive defense-oriented policy, and also this general pacifism that Japanese people think very important. How does a national discourse on national security changing in Japan? I just wonder if you could explain changing nature, if it's changing, of national security discourse among Japanese citizens to American audience.
はい、ありがとうございます。やはりこれ、国民の意識っていうのは、これ私はですね、自衛隊外交に関する世論調査というのをやってますよね、3年に1回。でこれを見ると、ここ数年というかですね、ここ2回ぐらいの間に、日本が戦争に巻き込まれる可能性があるというふうに答えた一般の国民の方が、もう8割以上なんです。これ昔はやっぱりもう4割とかそういう時代だったのが、急激にやはり日本はやっぱり脅威に囲まれている認識を持ってますので、私は日本の国民は決してこう言っちゃ大変失礼ですが、平和ボケしてないと思うんですね。かなりやっぱり現実をしっかりと捉えているんじゃないかと。でむしろ政治の方が遅れている認識を持っているので、そこはやっぱり私は日本の国民の皆さんの常識っていうのはやっぱあると思うんですね。それをもっとやっぱり表に出していっていただくようにするために、まあ政府がやる、あるいは我々みたいなOD とか外野のものが安全保障の重要性を訴えていく。こういうことをやっぱりずっと続けていくことが大事で、この NSS のポリシーレコメンデーションも、そういった政府に対する提言ということもありますけども、やはりメディアに対して、そして国民の皆様に訴えていくということを意図したものであります。
Thank you very much. Secretary Shriver, you've been working with and dealing with the Japanese for a long time in this area. And what's the impression, your impression of changing discourse in Japan, and how does that might affect U.S.-Japan security alliance in the future?
Well, I think that, thank you, Dr. Akimoto. I think the trend is encouraging, and I think there's my perception as a U.S. Former official who is friendly with Japan. My perception is there's greater awareness of the broader threats, and in some ways might even be more aware than we sometimes give credit for. And I know in the United States, one of the disconnects on China for a long time was elites and government officials made assumptions about the public and their views of China, which were ultimately out of step because many in the United States were feeling the pinch of economic competition and job loss, and were concerned about trade deficits in a way that was underappreciated by the government. And I think there are some similar trends in Japan where their assumption for a long time was because of the close economic relationship and just the volume of trade, the Japanese citizenry would tend to think a certain way about China, but in fact, the growing awareness about the insidious nature of the political warfare, the issues surrounding Japan in the areas of Taiwan and the Japanese claims of the Senkakus and how those are challenged. I think there is greater awareness among the Japanese public. So I think General Isobe's comment about understanding the pulse is very important, but also the dialogue needs to be both ways. So a report such as this, I hope there's good public exposure and attention because it's a very well-informed report and very thoughtful. And it would be great if there was wider distribution so that the public could see it and consume it and absorb it. But also Japanese elites like US elites need to listen and not only take the pulse, but listen to very specific problems that people have. And I think we're catching up in the United States with respect to China policy. And I think the Japanese public in a way is very far along in their sophistication with respect to certain challenges like China.
Thank you very much. I am glad that if we could spread the word by having this event on the report to American policymakers and the general public as well, so that we can play a little small role in promoting a stronger US-Japan security alliance. If I may, General Isobe, I would like to ask you a last question, which is to educate us, me, and also help American audience understand the process of coming to the new national security strategy. I understand that at this particular time that the Japanese government is aiming at the end of this year to come up with a new national security strategy. But how does this process work? I also understand that the Japanese government started to invite experts to hear their opinions on the various meetings. But could you explain how Japanese government will come up with the next national strategy from now on?
はい、ご質問ありがとうございます。秋元先生。これは私の印象でお答えしますと、通常であればやはり1年ぐらい前に有識者会議というのを立ち上げて、そこで通常 10回ぐらいですかね、ミーティング会議をやって、それからその答申を受けて政府が実際の戦略を作ると、こういうプロセスですけども、どうも今回はそうじゃないんじゃないか。1年しかもう期間がないし、でもうすでに有識者の方をピックアップしてですね、折木さんもすでにノミネートされてますので、そういった方々が意見を開示されて、個別に聞いてですね、それでもう速やかに政府の特に安全保障局の方で安全保障戦略はもう策定するんじゃないかなと思います。一つやっぱりポイントは7月に参議院選挙がありますので、それまではあまりなんていうんですかね、チャレンジングなイシューは取り上げることがなかなか難しいのかなと思うんですね。だから敵基地攻撃能力というのは、今のところは与党の中の公明党が どちらかというと、やっぱりあんまり乗り気ではないと思いますので、その辺の、説得などもこれから必要になってくるし、あるいは野党の中に自民党の案に近い維新とか民主党がいますので、そういった協力を得るのかどうか分かりませんけれども、基本的にはでもそれは国会の話じゃないので、基本的には国家安全保障戦略は政府が策定をする文書で、閣議決定を12月の下旬あたりに行って、セットされるというものだと思います。
I think it's very important from the viewpoint of political support. You have a good result in the upper house election this coming summer in terms of having political leaders who take national security seriously and also in a realistic way. So we have come to the point that we have to close the event, but I'd like to invite General Isobe and Secretary Shriver for a short last word. So I would begin with Secretary Shriver. Randy?
Only to repeat what I said earlier about congratulations on a very thoughtful report. I hope the Japanese government takes it seriously and harvests your very good recommendations. And I hope we stay aligned going forward. As I said, we're further along in our national security strategy at the official level. I think, again, we're through the deputies. So it's important that we are in coordination as these strategic documents are produced so that we remain aligned in all policy implementation going forward. So thanks for the opportunity to be here and to comment, but more importantly, thanks for a very good report.
Thank you very much. There are other very good report produced by individuals and groups, and I plan to bring them to American audience and hope that you would serve as a commentator. Thank you. General Isobe, you have the last word. Thank you very much.
はい、今日本当にありがとうございました。ランディ・シュライバー先生はじめですね、多くの方々からご質問を受けることによって、また課題とかですね、今後取り組むべきその課題がですね、明らかになってまいりました。おそらくこれは日本側が乗って聞いている政府の関係者も含めてですね、非常に示唆に富むウェビナーだったと思います。このような機会を与えていただきまして、本当にありがとうございました。Oriki統幕長をはじめ、スタディグループの代わりまして、御礼を申し上げます。
Thank you very much. I would also like to echo my appreciation to General Oriki, the chair of the group, and Mr. Kuroe, the vice chair of the group, and all the other members for creating this valuable report. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.